Hi guys, I am going to show you how to make the two manipulatives we're going to need for the next activity. In terms of supplies, you should have a pencil, a piece of blank paper, it should be blank on both sides, a piece of graph paper from your graph paper notebook is fine, or an index card, just something that you can use both sides of. I have two different color highlighters for tracing the different lines on the shapes we're going to make. That's optional. And then scissors and a straight edge. A ruler is great, or if you don't have one nearby, I found this is just a little card from a pack of markers that I'm going to use as my straight edge, but anything straight will work. So you're going to make two shapes and label each of them. One's an equilateral triangle and one is a rectangle. I'm going to start with the equilateral triangle. I'll start with the base. And these don't have to be perfect. We're not using them actually for geometry as such. We're using them to look at properties of numbers, which I think will be really interesting. So equilateral triangle, because all the sides are the same, the angles are the same. So 180 divided by 3 is 60. So I'm looking for about a 60-degree angle between each line. If you have a protractor and you want to measure it and make it exact, great, but you don't have to. I'm kind of eyeballing that, okay, then the tip would go there. I'm just going to check that that lines up over here. Yep. So then I'll draw my two other lines. It also doesn't need to be on the grid lines. It just needs to be straight. All right, so there's my triangle. So on the front side, I'm going to label a line from the top angle straight down, bisecting angle, which, you know, splits the opposite side length in half. And then I'm going to do that for each of the other angles too. If I've held my paper right, then it should intersect the halfway mark of each of the lines on both sides, but then also meet on that middle line, which sometimes takes a little finessing. So I should have actually done it in pencil to start with, so that if you need to make any changes, you can. But it looks like that'll work. Okay. So again, it's not perfect. It doesn't have to be, but you want to make sure you're drawing as close to center as possible for the angle bisectors. Then you're going to label an F just anywhere in the shape and big enough so that it's easy for you to see. And F is just for front. You don't need to write front. It's just there for your reference. And then you're going to also label the corners. So I'm going to use a different color pen. I'll label A, B. Please make sure you're labeling the bottom right corner as B, and then C. And the only reason I stress the same labeling is so that when we're working with these shapes, it'll be easier for us to make sure we're doing the same movements. I'm also going to just go over my lines in a different color highlighter. Again, so when I'm talking about using the lines, I can say the darker line or the yellow line. It might make it a little easier. Again, that step is optional. You don't have to do that. All right, so once you've labeled those things, you're going to cut out your triangle. And then on the back of it, if you want to go over the border with a pen or pencil, you're welcome to. You don't need to, but you are going to recreate those same lines. So the vertical bisector, and then from each of the other two angles. And depending on how thick your paper is, you should be able to see through it enough to use that kind of as a guide to make sure you're lining up your angles right. Then on the back side, you're going to label the same corners. So A up top, C is now in the bottom right, and then B in the bottom left. Okay, and on the back, I'm going to label this B for back. And then the last thing I'm going to do is just trace over those same lines, mostly for myself, just so I have the same reference. You might want to maybe dot your lines or dash them differently so that it's easier to know which line we're referring to that way. And that's it for the triangle. Okay, for the rectangle, we're going to do a very similar thing. Instead of trying to cut it out from the middle, I'm just going to use the side lengths of my piece of paper. It does not need to be a specific size. It just needs to be longer on one side than the other. And then the way you orient it should be the same. Cut that out. And I'm going to do pretty much the same steps. I'm going to label this side as F for front. And then I need to find the midpoint for the horizontal line and the vertical line. So vertically, I'm just checking, measuring in. This is the middle line. Draw that in. And then vertically, just make sure. If you're not using graph paper and you used a ruler, then you can just measure the lines. Okay, and then you're going to label the horizontal line as H for horizontal axis, and the vertical line as V for vertical axis. I'm going to grab a couple more colors. Make that the vertical line. And let's see, I'll use a blue for the horizontal one. And then same thing on the back. I'm going to trace those same midpoints. If I didn't say this already, the size doesn't matter, but you do want to orient your rectangle so that the horizontal length is the longest length. Then on the back, I'm going to label this B for back. And then this is still the vertical axis and the horizontal axis. And then I'm going to go over those lines again. And again, if you don't have colors, but you'd rather do, for example, I'll show you just quickly what I meant. Like maybe you have dotted lines for one of the axes, and then maybe arrows for another one. And the color or marking is really just to distinguish which line we're talking about when we're performing different moves with these rectangles. That is it. Thanks.